Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's virtual event being hosted by FLO Chennai. A very special welcome to our past presidents, past chairs, GB members, committee members, members of the press, and members at large. Thank you, Satyabama University, for supporting us in all our projects. A call out to all our volunteers and students who have joined us to show support for our initiative today. It gives me great pleasure in welcoming you all to the launch of Vacya, an initiative to create awareness and support for the cause of domestic violence supported by corporate organizations. Vacya means an active voice, and we hope that our combined voice against domestic violence reaches those who need it the most. This is a voice that will be raised by FLO Chennai, together with NGO partners BCVC and CV, and our corporate partners who have shown support for this cause, along with some prominent citizens of our city today. This is part of FLO Chennai's effort to support women find their equal standing in society and help empower them. FLO is today a voice of women at large, and Vacya is an attempt to amplify this voice and make it relevant. The instances of domestic violence have increased given the work from home scenario, and we are committed to combat this with the support of leading corporates in Chennai and later across Tamil Nadu. This initiative is aimed at corporates who can support this cause within their organization, not only to help their own employees, but to empower them to become catalysts of change for affected women in our extended communities. Please note that this event will last approximately 1 hour and there will be a Q&A session at the end. If you have any questions for our speakers, please submit them via the Q&A feature or the chat feature on your Zoom screen, and we will get to them during the session. Our panelists today are well-known, prolific women, each one of them an icon in her field, and it is an honor to start introducing them to you. Our first guest for the evening, Suhasini, is a nationally acclaimed film personality who incidentally belongs to a family of lawyers. Her list of accomplishments deserve a separate webinar, but I'm going to try and highlight some of them here today. However, it would be safe to say that this lady is an achiever who reinvents herself constantly and has reset to new norms successfully over the years. She has the distinction of being the first girl student to graduate as a cinematographer from South India with a first-class degree. And she won her first award for a Tamil feature film while she was studying. And this film fetched her the State Award for the Best Actress in 1981. Ever since, there's been no looking back for Hasini. She has acted in over 265 films in 4 different languages. She has won state awards several times for various films and was awarded the President's Award for Tamil movie Sindhu Bhairavi in 1986. She has won 7 Filmfare Awards, 8 Cinema Express Awards, and 8 Film Fan Association Awards as Best Actress in all 4 language films. The internationally acclaimed Cannes Festival invited her to France for her outstanding performance in Vanaprastham, a Malayalam feature film. She has also acted in English language film called Stumble, which won a national award for being the best English feature film in 2003. She also co-writes with her husband Mani Ratnam for some of his successful films and is partner in their production company Madras Talkies and Madras Talkies Television. She's directed an 8-part serial called Pen, which was highly successful and won all the awards in 1990. She is spokesperson for several international, national, and Chennai-based NGOs and started NAM Foundation in 2009 as a trust that would work to empower women, single women in Tamil Nadu. She presents a successful talk show on Raj TV called Ladies Junction that has empowered women across 65 towns in 320 episodes. She has been heading the organizing committee of Chennai International Film Festival since 2010 and was also appointed as the Honorary Counsel for Luxembourg by the President of India in 2014. So Hasini, it is indeed our privilege and honor to have you here amongst us.
Thank you, Rinku, and thank you, FLO, for organizing this wonderful evening. It's given us an excuse to get ready and look better and smile and not complain about being with family all the time.
Great.
So I'm going to start my timer. Six minutes.
Hasini, 1 sec. I'll introduce all the speakers and then we'll go.
Everybody. Okay.
Thank you. So our next speaker for the evening, Dr. Prasanna Gettu, is the reason Vacya is being launched today. She's the founder, trustee, and honorary CEO of PCVC, the International Foundation for Crime Prevention and Victim Care, an organization focused on women and child survivors of domestic violence and sexual abuse. A highly certified Crow Zebra Inc. USA trainer on sexual harassment prevention, training for employees and supervisors. She's a guest lecturer at many universities across the world. She's a core group member of We Can Global Network, NGO member on sexual harassment committees in several government and private organizations, and member of the Internal Complaints Committee for Prevention of Sexual Harassment at many organizations again. She has vast on-ground experience in crisis intervention and trauma care, especially in the area of interpersonal violence. She's also an avid researcher as well and has several books to her credit. Welcome, Prasanna, and we are here because of you today. Our next guest is indeed someone who comes with a lot of credit and credibility. It is my privilege now to welcome the Honorable Mrs. Justice Pushpa Satyanarayana. Ma'am is a judge at the Madras High Court and has made some landmark judgments in her time. But apart from this, she graduated in English literature and went on to obtain a law degree in the year 1985 from the Madras Law College. Aside from academics, she was also passionate about sport. She was an athlete and an ace hockey player who played as captain of the Tamil Nadu team in interstate hockey tournaments. She was a district level player in cricket and has actively participated in several car rallies conducted by the Madras Motor Sports Club for over 10 years. After having 28 years of standing in the bar, she was elevated as judge of the Madras High Court and assumed office in 2013. Ever since, she has to her credit some tough and landmark judgments that included cases like that of a transgender in 2017 who joined duty at the Chulamedu station, Chennai, after orders from MAM, and a recent case of a young woman with special needs who was unfortunately a rape victim. Her Honorable Justice allowed the termination of pregnancy at 24 weeks, taking into account the physical and mental health condition of the victim, and in order to respect the personal liberty of a woman. Ma'am, we are really privileged to have you here amongst us today. Thank you so much for taking out time. Amulya, can I request you to introduce our other speakers, please?
Yes, thank you, Rinku. It gives me great pleasure to introduce the remaining members of our esteemed panel. Our next guest is Ms. Geeta Rameseshan, is a highly acclaimed prolific High Court lawyer practicing in the Madras High Court. She is a senior lawyer who has been working in the area of constitutional law, criminal law, and family law since 1982. She has worked extensively in the area of women's human rights in general, and child rights. Of specific reference is her work with women living with HIV/AIDS, survivors of custodial violence, women and children who are survivors of sexual and domestic violence, and minority groups that face discrimination. She was a Heinz Fellow on Comparative Law from the University of Pittsburgh, an Eisenhower Fellow on Human Rights, Public Interest Litigation and Justice, and was a guest faculty on International Human Rights Law at the University of Pittsburgh. She has been invited by the National Judicial Academy to deliver lectures on various topics to judges and is currently an adjunct faculty in the Asian College of Journalism, where she teaches a course, Media, Law, and Society. She has written extensively in newspapers and journals on legal issues and is associated with many national campaigns on legislations relating to women and children. Welcome, Ms. Geeta. Our next guest is Hemalata Pandyarajan. She is the managing trustee of the MAFA Foundation and co-founder of the MAFA Group of Companies and a fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. She is a co-founder of MAFA, the largest HR service provider in the country. MAFA has recruited more than 4 lakh professionals in the short span of 20 years, and she is also a director of MAFA Strategy. She serves as a managing trustee of MAFA Foundation, which works for various projects in the areas of education, sports, healthcare, women's empowerment, and environment. The foundation has worked with more than 50,000 women, training them in skills and creating sustainable livelihoods. She is a trustee of the Tanker Foundation that supports underprivileged who have kidney ailments, and a director in Rudy Marketing, the marketing arm of Seva Ahmedabad, which supports over 2 lakh rural women across India. She is a governing council member of Stella Maris College, LIBA, and LISET in Chennai, and Maristella College, Vijayawada, an active Rotarian and a founder member of the Chennai Literary Association as well. Lata has contributed to various women's organizations like Vicky Ladies Organization FLO, IWN India Women Network, the Women's Wing of CII, Golden Jubilee Biotech Park, Madras Management Association, and Hindustan Chamber of Commerce. Welcome, Lata. Our final guest, and last but certainly not least, is corporate leader with a social conscience, Ms. Jayanti Vaidyanathan. Jayanti is a senior director and head of human resources at PayPal India and leads the site HRBP community across the APAC region and the HR business partner for the customer success platform product and tech team globally. In the last 12 years with PayPal, she has helped set up and drive strategies that support the organization's transformational vision aimed at enhancing employment and business value proposition. Jayanti holds a graduate degree in law, a postgraduate diploma in personal management from MSSW, and an executive management program from IMM. During her 20 plus years of diverse experience in human resources, Jayanti led both generalist and specialist human resources functions in high technology and consulting fields in companies such as Convances and eFunds International. She has been known for creating organizations that are highly engaged and deep-rooted in culture and acknowledged as great places to work. She has partnered with multi-dimensional groups and teams in delivering key programs results for the organizations with a keen sense for business outcomes, working with all stakeholders across the globe. She is the recipient of the Most Powerful HR Professionals of India Award by the World HRD Congress. Under her leadership, PayPal India has been named as one of the best places to work for the last 9 consecutive years by Great Places to Work Institute. For the last 2 years, the HR team has been recognized as the most effective HR function across industry by Zainov Consultants. It is my great pleasure to welcome Jayanti. Now that we've introduced all of our esteemed panel, I request Speakin to play our video.
I'd like to invite Suhasini to share her views on the topic.
Hi, Rinku. Thank you so much. I didn't realize, sorry, I just butted in the beginning. My
No
apologies
worries.
for that.
Please, no worries at all.
Okay. I'm not going to give you statistics and data of what is happening with women or people who are getting abused at home and who come to work without even telling their colleagues what is happening at home. But I'm just going to give you how emotionally it happens with people. See, I grew up in a feudal village where there were a lot of caste problems. The honorable judges and the lawyers would know. I mean, caste is a big problem. They hit each other. And I grew up with 2 lawyers at home. So they were hiding their clients who were bleeding and things like that. So what happens to men is that when they get angry, they hit each other. Okay. But till my teenage, I was there till 12 years, 13 is when I came to Chennai, Madras. I've never seen any woman being beaten up or even being slapped. Being slapped across the face is something that I was completely unaware of. And then I come to Chennai, and then I joined the Film Institute, and then I become an actress by accident. And when I act in my 2nd or 3rd film, there is a scene where my father slaps me on my face because I have, I stammer. So all the bridegrooms who come to see me are not happy because I'm a girl with stammering. So when I'm rejected by a guy, my father takes me aside, said, "You are so unlucky, you're so unlucky." And he slaps me and hits me. Okay, that is the first time I knew that fathers can hit daughters. And after that, the slapping scene was always a nightmare for me because it's not easy to do it. You should know. People should not actually slap you. There should not be any gap also between the face and the hand. So every time there was a slap, it used to be a nightmare for me because the shot should come out okay. And then, I shouldn't get really beaten up. If I get beaten up, it'll be take 1, take 2, take 3. The person who's slapping me will be apologizing to me. It goes on and on. Somewhere along the line, I forgot the emotional impact of a slap completely. When you see a film like Tappad, you realize it is so taken for granted when a girl talks out of line, or if she's trying to even sort out an issue, she's slapped across the face. It need not be her spouse. It could be her father. It could be her brother. It could be her mother. It's been going on, and it's something like really, really terrible. And in every film, it is there, and we all accept it. It's time that we started noticing what happens to women when they're beaten up, whether it's physically or mentally, suddenly when they're not even expecting it. So, Manik, can you just show the first clipping? I just want you to increase the volume because I just realized that the volume is a little less. So when I was only 28, I wrote a short story called Raji Madri Ponnu. A man with anger issues. Probably he saw his father treating his mother that way. And when he gets married to a beautiful girl, he thinks he can take her for granted. When he fails, he hits her. When he loses something, when he's agitated about something, he shows it on her. And she's from a very progressive family where they share everything. And suddenly she comes in, gets married to a very nice man, otherwise very nice man. So I'm just going to show you what happens to very nice people when they're anxious and where they show their frustration. Can we have the first clipping of Raji Madri Ponnu from Pen? It is in Tamil, but you can understand what's happening.
இது இல்லம்மா ட்ரையல் பேலன்ஸ்.
அது எப்படி இருக்கும்?
வெள்ளை பேப்பர்ல கம்ப்யூட்டர்ல பிரிண்ட் பண்ணிருப்பாங்க. நேத்து ஆபீஸ்ல இருந்து கொண்டு இங்க தான் வச்சேன். எதுவும் வச்ச இடத்துல அப்படியே இருக்காதே. எங்க வா? ராஜி இங்க வா. ஆபீஸ்ல இருந்து நேத்து கம்ப்யூட்டர் பிரிண்டர் கொண்டு வந்து வச்சிருந்தேன். எங்க?
தெரியுது.
அந்த டேபிள்ல தான் வச்சிருந்தேன்.
நான் பார்க்கல.
அரஞ்சிருவேன். வீட்டுல இருக்க இது கூட தெரியலையா? அதை விட உங்களுக்கு என்ன வேலை?
சந்தர், ஏண்டா அவட போய் திட்டுற?
என்னமா சாப்பிட்டு தூங்குறா? இவதான் எங்க குப்பையில போட்டிருப்பா. எங்கடி?
நிச்சயமா ஆபீஸ்ல இருந்து கொண்டு வந்தீங்களா?
நான் தான் சொல்றேன்ல, உனக்கு என்ன செவிடா? எனக்கு இப்ப கண்டுபிடிச்சதா? இப்ப இன்னைக்கு ஃபைனல் ஆடிட் கொண்டு போகலன்னா கிழிச்சிருவானுங்க. இப்ப எடுத்து கொடுக்கலன்னா தேடு தேடு.
நேற்று நீங்க வரும்போது கையில 2 வீடியோ கேசட் தான் கொண்டு.
பல்ல உடைச்சிருவேன். தேடி கண்டுபிடிக்காம பதில் பேசிட்டா. நிக்கிற தேடு தேடு.
ஏன் மேல கோபப்பட்ட என்ன அர்த்தம்? இன்னைக்கு ஆபீஸ்ல இருந்து என்ன சீட்டை கழிச்சு வெளியே அனுப்பிச்சான்னா அது உங்க 2 பேர் ஆகலாம்.
So this is what I wrote when I was barely 28. I was newly married. My husband is a darling, so don't think that this happens in all the houses, but it happens in some houses. And this man is a very nice man, otherwise very nice. But when he gets angry, he doesn't know what happens to him. So how is our corporate, if the girl is working and if she's going to work, how are the colleagues going to help her out? Is what we are going to discuss today. I think that's what we're going to discuss today. So I think we are running out of time. So what I'll do is I'll just show another clipping. What happens to a girl when she gets beaten up? Mani, can we have the third clipping? Not the second one, the third clipping. And what really happens to her? I think that's the problem, like a lot of women, they don't even realize that it's happening to them. And when it happens to them, they don't want to tell anybody about it. And they don't want to discuss it. Because what they go through is so shocking for them. So they'll rather bury it. So when you start a movement like this, how to bring out women like that who don't want to express the trauma that they're going through. There are so many of us who are like very, very shy and, who don't like to talk about our problems. But this one talks to her husband. So can we have the clipping? The third one.
ஏன் அடிக்கிறீங்க? சொல்லுங்க. ஏன் அடிக்கிறீங்க? எங்க அப்பா என்ன விளையாட்டு கூட அடிச்சதுல தெரியுமா? நீங்க இப்படி அடிக்கிறீங்களே?
ஐயோ, அன்னைக்கு ஏதோ கோவத்துல உன்னை தெரியாதுன்னு அடிச்சிட்டேன். அது மறக்க மாட்டியா?
மறக்க முடியல. 24 வயசுக்கு அப்புறம் பலாருன்னு கண்ணத்துல அரைஞ்சா பொறுத்துக்க முடியல. நீங்க என் கண்ணத்துல மட்டும் அடிக்கல, ஈகோ, ஃபீலிங்ஸ் எல்லாத்தையும் அடிக்கிறீங்க. நீங்க அடிக்கும் போது அப்படியே புழுங்கி செத்துடலாம் போல இருக்கு. எல்லாமே போன மாதிரி வலிக்குது.
ஏதோ அடிச்சிட்டேன், விட்டுட்டேன். ஏன் அதையே பிடிச்சிட்டு இருக்க?
உங்களுக்கு நான் என்ன சொல்லணும்னு தெரியல. ஒரு பொண்ணுக்கு இது எவ்வளவு கஷ்டமா இருக்கும்னு உங்களுக்கு புரியவே இல்லை.
ராஜி, பிளீஸ், நான் இப்ப சந்தோஷமா இருக்கேன். தயவு செஞ்சு மூட கெடுக்காத.
ஆமா, உங்களுக்கு இஷ்டம் இருக்கும்போது பொண்டாட்டி பேசணும், சிரிக்கணும், கட்டி பிடிச்சுக்கணும். கோவம் வந்துட்டா அடிமை, அடி வாங்கணும், திட்டு வாங்கணும், வாய் மட்டும் சும்மா இருக்கணும். இல்ல
சாரி 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 சாரி, இந்த பேச்ச நிறுத்துறியா?
நீங்க அடிக்கிறத நிறுத்துவீங்களா? நிறுத்துவீங்களா?
நான் என்ன உன்னை தினமும் அடிக்கிறேன்? ஏதோ கோவத்துல ஆத்திரத்துல என்ன பண்றதுன்னு தெரியாம அடிச்சிடுறேன்.
Okay, this is what I wanted to show you. How expressive are the women in the workforce going to be? Yesterday we were discussing the people in the lower strata of society are a little more open when it comes to domestic violence. I think people in middle class and upper middle class are not going to open their mouths. So how to bring them out, and how do we help them come out of the shell and tell people this is what is happening? As I'm talking to you, before I close, I see a middle-aged lady in the terrace walking around. She's 70. She turned 70 last year. We all had a party because she lives in the same colony. When I was newly married, she was my neighbor, and she told me what happened between her and her husband. She's a better driver. She always drives a car really well. But for some function, the husband was driving, and they both were coming in the car in our street, and suddenly he lost control and he hit the vehicle that was right in front. And when he was about to hit the vehicle, the wife said, "Hey, paathu ponga, be careful." And you know what he did? He hit the car, turned around and slapped her. She told me, I didn't understand why I was beaten up that day. He hit a car and he met with an accident. And I was telling him, brake, somebody is coming. I was warning him about an accident where we both of us could have been hurt. But he stopped, finished having that accident, turned around and slapped her on her face. So this is the reality that is happening around here. And she's right there, picking malligapu from her garden. So when I saw her, I realized, okay, I'll tell you about her also. So there are so many people in different strata of society. So we need to address all of them. And we need to have people who understand. For example, if I'm a boss in a company, and if somebody comes with like teary eyes, I'm just going to say, can you leave all your problems at home? We have work to do. So that insensitive is people like me. Even I'm going to be like that. So how are we going to help all these people is my question. So thank you, Rinku, for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Suhasini. As always, your insights and your understanding of human behavior really brings out, honestly, the true nature of things that happen around us. Thank you so much for sharing your views with us. And I'd now like to invite Prasanna Gettu, the founder of PCVC, to come and share her views on this subject and on Project Vacya. Prasanna, over to you.
Thank you so much, Suhasini, for showing those two films. I think even though it was done years back, I think very much applicable even to this day. So thank you very much for that. A very good evening to respected panel members here, members of FICCI and the wider audience. I would like to thank FICCI FLO first in so openly acknowledging that domestic violence has no boundaries and doesn't stay at home. And secondly, that addressing domestic violence is not just a family matter or best left to the police or the courts or to NGOs, but that of businesses and workplaces too. And therefore the program Vacya. PCVC is most happy and privileged to collaborate with FICCI and Chennai volunteers in implementing this program. To those of you who are not very familiar with PCVC, we are a not-for-profit organization providing specialist domestic violence support services in Chennai and other parts of India too. We provide a wide range of programs to support women and children affected by domestic violence or interpersonal violence or family violence, whatever you call it. In 20 years of our existence as an NGO, we have witnessed, and I think all of us have for that matter, how domestic violence survivors experience heightened physical and emotional violence, as well as employment sabotage at the hands of intimate partners. We just saw a couple of clips. Well, who now in a pandemic world are equipped with additional opportunities to monitor the survivors' job-related activities. The COVID-19 stay-at-home and hence work from home worsened an already existing problem. Take a minute to think about how your involvement and performance at work might be affected if you were a victim or a perpetrator of domestic violence, or even a friend, a colleague, a manager of a victim or a perpetrator. Would you turn up to work if you had a black eye or other visible injuries? What if your abusive partner hid your work clothes to stop you from going to work? Or promised to care for your children but turned up drunk? Or in the given scenario, say an abusive partner switches off the internet when your meeting is just going to start, or leaves the dogs in the meeting room. Or say you have a protection order and he lands up at work. How do you tell your manager this? How do you explain to your manager that you need time off work to attend legal proceedings, or move to a domestic violence shelter, or go see a doctor? Okay, what do you say if you have already used up all your leave? Would you tell your manager that the recent drop in your performance or productivity is linked to domestic violence? Can we do that? Or would you try to cover it up, explaining it with other excuses of some kind which are acceptable? My child is sick, my mother needs to be taken to a doctor, so on. Say you lose an employee of 20 years to a fatal injury and are left wondering, you never knew she was even a domestic violence victim. Why didn't she tell you that? Once you begin to unravel the various ways of domestic violence that affects the lives of survivors and victims, including their work lives, it is difficult not to see them as a concern for business. Over the years, we have seen that unemployment and economic hardships are strongly correlated with increase in abusive behavior towards spouses, children, or the elderly. Also, during when we have seen that domestic violence increases when families spend more time together, such as festivals, summer holidays, and so on. And that's exactly what has happened with the COVID lockdown. Okay, that was aimed at flattening the curve. It's been 100 days of pure hell for hundreds and hundreds of women. So much that a caller to our hotline recently told me that she wished she tested positive. At least that will keep him off from her. Another contributing factor today is that these stay-at-home orders or conditions also hinders the victim's ability to reach out for help. She has to be alone to make that call. Okay, and those chances to be alone have now dwindled. Yes, even prior to this pandemic, supervisors or co-workers already played a key role in extending support and helping survivors connect with resources or services or giving advice and so on. But now the workplace's role is even more critical when a national crisis creates barriers to seeking safety due to increased isolation, scarce resources, and inaccessible pathways to escape from abuse. So with businesses having to shoulder a lot of responsibilities already and liabilities since the COVID-19 pandemic, how do employees react to this expanding risk? I don't want to go too much into statistics, but the almost 1 in 3 women suffer from domestic violence. Okay, and that also means they are that number of perpetrators. So how are we going to manage this? Well, the answer is Vacya. The most important thing employers can do is simply be aware of the increased risk of domestic violence and make sure the employees who may become victims are kept informed about any resources they may provide. So what happens when a company registers to Project Vacya? 3 things. One is educate, support, and prevent violence. These are the three aims. So we will help build a domestic violence prevention policy, a comprehensive policy that addresses the issue. Having a policy lets an employee know that the company is aware of the issue and provides the support. So it's very important that we have a policy in place. The second is creating a task force. It is important that the HR does not do it alone. You need a group of stakeholders or representatives from the HR, medical team, legal team, an NGO that you're working already working with, who come together and make informed decision making. And training, most important is training. Okay, when managers, supervisors, and co-workers are trained about domestic violence and its impact on the workplace, and the impact on the health of the women, especially, and how to respond and get the help that victims need, they are saving lives. Okay. Like I already said, yes, we have been already helping. The difference is that now our support is going to be informed support. The next thing is building awareness. Okay, it might be in your existing programs that you already have. Maybe employee orientation programs. Within that, we can incorporate or newsletters, mailers, whatever it might be. Or just like sexual harassment mandated trainings, you can decide to have domestic violence trainings and create that awareness. And the last is support. Okay. So how are we going to support is the first, maybe the question in your minds. Okay. And that's one option that you have. Of course, you might be working with other NGOs and you can take their support. But here we are going to publicize the PCVC's Dhwani National Domestic Violence Helpline. Okay. We do online, on-phone counseling. We do risk assessments. We do safety planning. And we refer to PCVC's in-house programs and other programs outside. So a little about the hotline. We are a 20-year-old organization, and we've been having a helpline for the last 20 years. Recently, we decided that nobody but us is more equipped to start the National Domestic Violence Hotline. So 2 years back, we launched the National Domestic Violence Hotline with a free toll-free number. Okay, it is 24/7 hotline. It is multilingual. It is a multi-channel hotline, which means that not just by voice calls, anybody can connect with the hotline by WhatsApp chat. There's a live chat that is available on our website. There can be messages that they can send us. There could be emails that they send us. It's a multi-channel hotline. Okay. So I'll rest my case with that. When we think of domestic violence, we typically don't think about workplaces. Okay, but I think Vacya envisions to change that. Okay, where your workplaces say we are with you. Okay, so again, I rest my case with that, and I invite Honorable Justice Pushpa to please, Justice Pushpa Satyanarayan, please come and speak to the audience.
Good evening, one and all, those the wide audience who have logged in. So I thank in the beginning itself FLO for giving me this platform to speak up my views on this. See, the Domestic Violence Act and whatever the remedies that has been given, were they not available even before coming into force of the act, which was introduced in 2005 only. They were there were remedies, but those remedies were under the criminal law. And a person, for instance, is 498A, the dowry harassment. So if the person is harassed for dowry, the demand of dowry, she has to go to the criminal court under 498A. See, the moment a woman steps into the criminal court, the matrimonial bond breaks there. So it is not liked. And the woman steps into the police station to give a complaint. So how is it received by the husband? So the getting into the police or dragging the husband to the police or the in-laws to the police station itself is viewed as a mental agony. And that is a utmost harassment according to the men and their in-laws. So the legislature thought it fit that these could be curtailed, curbed, even in the beginning itself. See, if it is a dowry, you come to the rescue of the woman only after she dies of burns, and after the stove bursts. So all those laws only after the commission of the crime they come to the rescue. But that is why it was thought this will be a civil law, a civil remedy for women, where even when as they are undergoing the violence, the assault, they can get help from the public, anybody for that matter. So they can approach and get it redressed. The one fantastic feature of this act, I should say, is the right to shelter. It is not that if a woman wants to get even maintenance, she has to walk out of the home and demand for a maintenance. She can stay under the same roof and ask for maintenance. That is what is provided here. And if where the women dread to go to the police, where the women are not very familiar to go to a lawyer, here they have a mechanism called the protection officer. So you go to the protection officer, and the protection officer gives you an audience, understands your problem, then according to how it is being perceived, you are assisted to go to the magistrate and get all the orders whatever is possible under the act. So, namely the compensation, the protection, the right to residence. And when Mrs. Suhasini played those clippings, and she felt very bad for it, and she could it was actually not, when she received a slap by the co-actor, it was only an acting and not intentional. But here the domestic violence what we are now talking about is really intentional. So when the violence is inflicted on a woman, it is deliberate, the act is very deliberate. So it is now becomes a punishable offense. And this domestic violence, the act views it in four categories, be it a physical abuse, a sexual abuse, verbal and emotional abuse, or even the economic abuse. See, basically, you should know, where you are abused, and you are there living under the same roof, and what kind of assault or violence is inflicted on you. See, physical abuse, obviously, like what was shown in the film clipping also, it is the bodily injury, the harm, whatever the impairment to your health, etc. Sexual abuse goes without saying, even the humiliation, the degradation of any woman of her dignity. So the court also recognizes the other forms of sexual abuses, namely compelling a spouse to watch the porno and forced sexual intercourse, etc. Even that is also viewed as domestic violence. And verbal or the emotional, the second clipping, I think what was played, when the woman asks the husband, why did you beat me? So she realizes that what she received from the husband, it was not justified. So for some fault of his, the woman was penalized. She was punished. So she says, why do you beat me? Even I never received a blow from my father. So that is the emotional abuse. See, verbally, whatever he would have done earlier in the morning when he slapped and chided her. But these kind of insults to ridicule, the humiliation, the name calling. In how many families we have seen, if the woman is unable to bear a child, unmindful of whether the fault is in the husband or the wife, it is always the woman who is being blamed. Yes, and if somebody has done some wrong in the family of the woman, it is always the woman who is being pointed out. She has been haunted, and the character association. And the husband sometimes, they threat to commit suicide. that is a emotional blackmail. That is a coercion to make her accept for something. So, and in how many of the families, even the women are allowed, or the girls are allowed to marry a person of their own choice, though it is very now prevalent that love marriages are allowed, but still whether the choice is, you are allowed to make the choice. Then comes the economic abuse. So the economic abuse, obviously, if the woman is employed, she will have a little bit of a financial freedom, but if she is not employed, she will not be even provided for her food, for herself, for children, and the deprivation of anything economical, even for her to go for a treatment, her medical assistance, and all that will be economical abuse. And it will also include if she is deprived of her rightful share in the property. So even if she is denied of that, that is also the economic abuse. And in fact, courts have recognized selling the jewelry that was offered to the a woman at the time of marriage as Srijana, even that is also an economic abuse. So without the permission, without the consent, even her property, be it jewelry or whatever, it cannot be sold. So these are all the kind of economic, I mean, the abuses, the violences, the various violences which are categorized under the Act. If any woman undergoes these kind of abuses, it is open to her to go to the protection officer and say. And if it happens, obviously, as Mrs. Prasanna put it, that impacts the workplace. So, how do you like a woman coming to an office after receiving a slap from her husband as she is leaving for an office for no reason? And she has to reach that office on time, and she cannot say that my husband hit me, therefore I was delayed. She may have to miss her bus or her whatever is the transport. And see, I would even say one of these examples from my home itself. I have a cook, and she is in fact a court employee. She's a court staff, but I'm using her as my cook. And during this COVID period, though for most of the days she didn't come, and because of the lack of public transport, she has to come from a little bit far away place. So I was offering to send my car and bringing her here. And one day, like I think the morning alone they had a bus, so she boards that bus in the mornings and she comes here along with the conservative staff. While going back, it was scorching sun in May. I said, I will drop you in the bus stop or I'll drop you home. She refused to take a lift because she says, என் வீட்டுக்காரர் சந்தேகப்படுவார்மா. நான் சொன்னேன், வேர் இஸ் யுவர் வீட்டுக்காரர்? ஹீல் வே சம்வேர் அட் ஒர்க் பிளேஸ். இல்லை, இந்த பக்கமா எங்கேயாவது சுத்திட்டு இருப்பாரு. ஐ வில் நாட் கோ. She refused to go. Then I asked, one day I asked one of my constables who is there at as a sentry here, take her, go along with her, advise the husband that if this kind of mental torture continues, he will be put in his place. And that fellow is one good for nothing fellow. He doesn't go for work. Only this woman has to work, take the money, salary, and she is bringing up her 2 children. And this fellow very conveniently says that police, that boy is hardly about 23 years. He says, "Nee avana vechindirukkiya." See what kind of crude mentality they have. So see where it starts. If you are able to address that, and now she is happy, but she always lives her life with the fear. What will happen if she is out of a judge's place? So, and he cannot keep a vigil also. And as Prasanna pointed out, now the COVID situation has also increased the domestic violence multifold because there is no place for the women to hide. So it is like ஓடவும் முடியாது ஒளியவும் முடியாத situation. And those women who would have thought that they can step out of the house after becoming somewhat economically stable, now the situation is that whatever money they have saved, they are spending it for some other purpose. So even that aspect goes. And living under the same roof with the same abusive partner, that will be the breeding ground for increase in the domestic violence against women. But what else to do? Now at this situation, Now we have just launched Vacya. Even to approach Vacya, is there any way out for that woman? Therefore, what can be better done? I think Prasanna is an expert on that. She has been handling cases of this nature for decades. I would only suggest even the grocery shop, the hospitals, the pharmacies, they can those people can be sensitized that, yeah, and even the neighbor, supposing they come to know that something is happening, some kind of a violence is inflicted on the women in the particular house, so they can approach. So there will not be any doubt. Not necessarily should go to a police. They can come to their rescue. So you may ask how. They can come and keep banging the door in case they feel that there is some kind of a violence happening, or keep ringing the bell. So can we involve? That is what I mean, that you have to involve the society, sensitize the entire society in these issues. And when I was introduced by Rinku, he mentioned about a case about MTP. Yes. See, the medical termination of pregnancy in that case, the mother, she herself is a destitute. The husband left. She had a daughter who is mentally retarded. She is only of 17 years, but her stature, I think she must be, she's with the Down syndrome, because I could see only the photograph. Her physical size is only of a 10-year-old girl. And the molester, everyone thought it was her own uncle, but it was the neighbor. So because this destitute woman, namely the mother, had to leave the daughter at home and go fend for herself. So she works as a coolie. But the neighbor has made use of this opportunity, impregnated that girl, my minor, and only when she was 5 or almost 24 weeks. So in fact, the amendment came very recently in the month of May, but I had to pass the order even in the month of February. I exercised my discretion to do that. So when I allowed for medical termination of pregnancy for the purpose of the investigation, you have to preserve the DNA, number one. Number two, because it is a court order, they will do the termination and send her home. But what is the guarantee that it will not happen, it will not recur to her again? Are there any homes for these mentally retarded women? And she will be turning 18, so she becomes an adult in terms of the law. So who are they to take care of them? So all these things also have to be addressed. See, these are all very serious violences. And especially, when the person is mentally deranged, see, you can easily take advantage of it. See, that is why we say the increase in the number of incidents is directly linked to the vulnerability of the victim. If the victims are vulnerable, of course, for the minors, you got the POCSO Act has come. But this domestic violence, though it was addressed earlier, but this is a special enactment, giving all kind of protection for the victim who has undergone the sufferings, and how easily she can get over it with the help of the protection officer, who can be approached through institutions, NGOs like Vacya, right? So, and at the workplace, of course, I think maybe Mrs. Jayanti would speak on that, see how the HRs have to be sensitized on this, and the secrecy also. See, supposing there is an employee he works with you, and you know that there is some problem with her, and she wants to confide in you. But what is the guarantee that you give that you keep those matter in secret? See, because that will be another humiliation through the HR if it goes to the other person. So even one word of insult, one word of ridicule, that will be worse than the domestic violence what she may be facing at home. So that also has to be addressed. And when these kind of organizations, see, I think you would agree with me, Jayanti, when I say 65% of the employers don't have this kind of remedial measures for domestic violent people. Yes, so though it is not a statistics, but it is a very good initiative you have taken. And these domestic violence is inflicted not only because of the husbands. It is only 83% report says the physical, sexual, or emotional abuse by the husbands who are the perpetrators. 56% by the mothers-in-law, 33% by fathers-in-law, and 27% by the husband's siblings. There also the orthodox social norms and the stigma placed on the survivors of the sexual and domestic violence are the reasons for getting them reported or underreported. Many of them, for the fear of shame, they won't go and even complain of this. See, but now I think the scenario has changed a bit, but not completely. This has been there right from the day one. The women were born in the globe. Then, as I said, for these kind of violence, the women always dread to approach the police, and for every time you have to go to the police, it is also economically not viable for them. And once you go to the police, as I told you earlier, the husband says that you have dragged me to the police station, so where I was disrespected, so I can't take you back. That they call it as a mental cruelty. See, supposing even the neighbor or any other relative, they say, "Oh, your wife dragged you to the police station," there ends the matter. See, that he feels ashamed, but he never realizes that he has ridiculed or he has disrespected his wife. That was a result of this. Then, see, these kind of cases, when we say that empowering women, the empowerment also should include this. So, as I told you earlier about the name calling, that one, if a wife or if a woman is unable to bear a child or she's unable to give birth to a male child, even now it is, frowned upon. I remember a case. It happened somewhere in Rajasthan. It is a desert, but in the winter, it was chill in the night, and the woman had already had 2 girls, so she had gone there for her delivery of the 3rd child. The husband had called the brother-in-law and said, "Your sister need not take the strain of coming back and joining me here. In case she gives birth to a female child, she can as well stay there." And the unfortunate situation, like, she had to deliver a baby who happened to be a female. So she was just she didn't know what to do, and the brother of hers said, "Very well, you have to do away with the child if you want to join the husband." So in the chilly, windy night, she put the infant bare body straight under the open space, and she was just sitting next to it, leaning on the pillar. And it was a late night. She dozed off. So in the morning, when she quickly woke up and she realized what she did and went and saw the child had turned blue all over the body, and she thought anyway the police would come to take her away. But then she just saw some movement in the body. She quickly hugged the baby and she took her into her arms. Then she said, "If this infant, hardly a day old, can defy even the nature and survive, why not I go defy my husband?" So she walked to fight and be with him. So that is how the story goes. Therefore, with this, I congratulate FLO for giving me an opportunity. I thank all the ladies connected to it. It takes, of course, huge efforts to organize and implement a project like Vacya. I'm sure it is an amazing project and brings many blessings to all. So the project would certainly be of a greatest benefit for those silent victims at home, leading, or it will help them to lead a very meaningful life. So I'm sure Vacya has the potential to do more benefit than the DV Act itself. So with these few words, I can conclude. I thank you all for your kind invite.
Honorable Justice Madam, thank you so much. I think you've already started the program. The awareness has already been started. So thank you so much, ma'am. I now invite Senior Advocate Geeta Ramasheshan to speak about DV and the relevance of Vacya.
Thank you, Prasadna, and Honorable Justice Mrs. Pushpa Satyanarayanan, Ms. Hasini, Lata, Jayashri, Rinku, and Prasanna. I consider it a great privilege that you have asked me here to speak and discuss a few of my views on this issue. And I congratulate FLO and PCVC because to my mind, this is the first instance of this whole aspect of looking at domestic violence and the workplace. I don't think this has been thought of anywhere. Some of us have thought about this on a very individual basis, but that FLO has stepped into it to push it in a major way is a matter which is really something that needs to be congratulated. Ms. Suhasini's clip actually exposed various layers to the nature of domestic violence, you know, where he justifies his loss of temper. He says he's frustrated. He says he doesn't want to think about it. He says he has already forgotten about it. And Honorable Justice Pushpa's presentation, actually by giving a various examples, especially with that pertaining to her own staff, who is actually employed in a very power position home, but still is frightened of her husband when she gets back. And I think these three have given you the various extent of violence that can exist in various ways. So instead of giving examples, I thought I will just cull a few instances on how these emerge as various concerns in terms of domestic violence and then take it forward. So many years, 498A, which came almost 30 years ago, we have still not even seen the extent of the ramification. And as Honorable Judge had pointed out, that was a criminal law. It continues to be a criminal legislation. You take your spouse to the police station, then even chances of saving the marriage, so to speak, goes away, with a lot of women who actually come back and say, I didn't want a police complaint to be registered. I only wanted that the police, who is again a person of authority, issue him a warning. But then, it goes on into, it bounces back in various situations. We do need that law, and it is required in various ways in certain situations to be applied. But yes, the Domestic Violence Act, which actually addresses various forms of divorce, which the Honorable Judge had pointed out, also actually looks at civil remedies at the court of the least, at the court of the lowest order, so to speak, namely that of the magistrate. However, to understand how and to look at experiences, to look at how, what are the concerns that emerge for women who are financially independent, because we are looking at FLO. So we are not, I don't propose to look at or address women who are, economically disadvantaged, because then the program is with reference to women who are working in the organized sector. So the first what I would say is that, what would a woman feel? One point which her lordship had mentioned was the whole issue of stigma, which is probably higher when you are more, when you become a little more privileged, so to speak. The example yesterday, which we discussed, and what Ms. Suhasini had pointed out, that if women are not so privileged, they still are more bold and brave to come and fight. When their husbands would take away the money for alcohol, they would still put up a big fight and resistance and come in whatever manner they can do within that structure. They are probably a little more vocal than, say, the middle and the upper middle class or the other class women. So the first point I would think, in order for us to understand how we can take this forward, what Vacya, of course, Prasanna is a great expert in this, but what Vacya can, members of, FICCI and others, who can actually look into the fact is that the greatest difficulty is to address the normalization or the inevitability of domestic violence. You think it's very normal? It's very different from even other forms of violence that are done on strangers, on other women, not within the family. You also think it's inevitable. You are married in this family and therefore it is inevitable. Then we also need to consider that here the domestic violence need not necessarily be from the spouse. It can be from your son. Say for example, a woman who's working in her 50s may still find some kind of economic abuse from her son. And when it is done by a child, it's much more harder to actually accept the fact that this happens. And this is happening also in a big way. Now, the first problem, of course, would be the rejection from the family and society, which is closely linked to social stigma. Lack of shelter homes that have come forward in many of our discussions. So where do you go? You know, even if you're employed, where do you take your children? Where do you go? Some kind of an emotional attachment to your spouse, to your child, to anybody who does the violence on you, hoping that he would change, hoping that it will stop, hoping that when love and affection is shown at a later point of time, you know, now things will improve. So the vicious circle here is probably far more complex than other examples of violence. Getting used to a particular standard, you know, is probably the hardest. You made your home, this is your home. How then do you actually come away from this? You know, what can you leave? And what can you take with you? And when there is a legal battle, it becomes very vicious. You know, there is no two opinion on this viciousness. All of us who are familiar with some extent know the kind of viciousness it can happen, even for, you know, sharing everything with children, with maintenance, etc. So I think and somewhere along, if your natal family does not support you, then the task becomes all the more harder. And that is where I think the employer's role can have a much more, you know, it can have a very enabling effect on a lot of women. You know, especially if we take for the fact that women today are moving away from their towns. So if they are married and they live in, say, Chennai with their husband, their natal family is somewhere else, sometimes even in rural India. Not very easy to get a support because the family thinks you have moved a bit up in life. And this is something, maybe they have naturalized it and they think that this is something you should probably learn to adjust. Because almost all the time, what is thrown at a woman who's economically more independent is that you have become timir pidichava. You know, you have started earning. So, you know, you have become very arrogant. Secondly, again, since the economics of marriages today or the family today have become very complex, you know, sharing incomes, joint homes, houses purchased jointly, etc. It can often trigger a different kind of a control, which can often lead to violence. So while the actual underlying problem of, say, sharing resources, which could lead to a quarrel, may not be violent, it could trigger violence because, you know, the whole aspect of domestic violence is that it has to be one of control. So then, what can we look at with the help of Vacya? A lot of ideas have actually come from Prasanna's presentation itself and from what Honorable Justice Pushpa had said. So I will just supplement some of them. One is that we don't have it as a mandate as yet now under the law, but we know for a fact that sexual harassment at the workplace casts a mandate on the employer to provide a list of do's and don'ts for the employee. You know, this is some kind of a process that can start with the with many of the employers, maybe to put up posters, to put up a list of what can be the do's and don'ts in terms of domestic violence. Just take from the act, cull it down and circulate them. The second aspect could be that the employer could say that they have a zero tolerance of domestic violence. You know, many of the husbands would come and say, you know, their wife has given a complaint to their employer, and their employer has asked them what has to be done. Now, often we find that when a man has even a 498A criminal case, or has a has a case, employers are quite sympathetic. They don't take any, obviously you can't, of course, take any action against him, because that's not, that's not considered to be part of the workspace, but they are more sympathetic than an employer would be towards a woman who needs to go to court, who needs to take leave, to appear on umpteen hearings, etc. So I think understanding the legal process of this would be generating another awareness where the employer could be a little more liberal in granting leave for women to appear in the courts. Now, the issue of training has already been discussed as to who could be the personnel, and also the issue of networking. I use the word networking in a very loose way, that the organizations have contacts with, of course, PCBC is very much, very involved in this, but then groups that are actually working in this area to not just come, to facilitate and assist women in this. But what would happen also in a given case where a wife complains to you, saying that my husband who's working in your company is very violent. So in that stage also, I think there needs to be a contact with a group which can then address this issue on a larger way. Now, how do we understand privacy in domestic violence? Is one of the very complex areas. Now, let's say, especially too often than not, people would constantly bring this. It happens within my house, especially if it is not physical violence. Physical violence is very almost open and shut. If you have injuries, even then the women would go to the hospital and say they got the injury through some other reason. They will not make it out that it was by an assault. And even then the hospital will record it as an alleged case of assault. Okay. So then how does one address this complexity of privacy? This needs a further, further thought to go through. I mean, many of us understand what it is, and many of us understand that within the sphere of domestic violence, especially in the context of judgments and case laws, etc., there can be no privacy. I mean, you can't hit somebody or abuse somebody and then say this is my right. But when it comes in a outside the legal system sphere, how would in this Vacya, we take forward the idea of privacy. So what happens if the husband, you inform him or ask him to come and meet you, and he says, no, it's my right of privacy. So that's a concern that we need to see. And above all, I think these are just a few of the measures that I thought I would share with you, which can, I think, go to protect and prevent. In due diligence concept of international law, we look at 4 Ps. we look at protection, prevention, prosecution, and punishment. Too often, the last two, prosecution and punishment, jumps into foray at every stage. You know, we are always thinking of courts, we are always thinking of legal systems, etc. But I think if we address this in this idea, in this notion of protecting the woman, then, you know, and also maybe in that way preventing domestic violence, we could then go a long way, you know, in sort of addressing this. I once again thank you all, and I thank FLO and PCVC for emerging on this very, you know, very brave and new process, and I wish it all success. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was really insightful and very, very informative for us. I would now invite Lata Pandirajan to share her views, please.
Thank you, Rinku. And I must first congratulate both PCVC Prasanna and of course FLO for really taking this important initiative. I think it's very, very critical because I've seen, like as Rinku said, as Amulya said, I've worked with a lot of women at the grassroots level. And I've also, of course, handled people at the corporate level. And I've seen that, you know, one thing which has really changed women at the grassroots level is this formation of self-help groups. Because when women come together, they're able to really, you know, share their views, share their things, share their pangs. And I think that support system, I think is very, very important for a woman. And I think it's very, very important for also a corporate woman. I think that's what I think, like, I think this initiative will give the corporate women. I think it is today very, very important. We give women some space to really express. I think that's just not there now. And I mean, I've really, like, we had a very young girl who had got married in office long time back. And, you know, she, I mean, of course, she had this kind of, see, again, like, I'm sure, like, Pushpa ma'am has spoken about it and Geeta has spoken about it, because violence can be of many kinds. Okay, so not only just physical violence, but, you know, emotional violence, like Hasni's clips showed that so clearly. And yeah, this girl, I think, like, she was like, you know, she was very, very disturbed. And she came and told me, like, ma'am, you know, something like, you know, it's love marriage, so I can't even go back to my parents. I mean, see the social system, how it looks at things that way. And when I went and told my father, he said, what wrong did you do so that, like, he's really behaving like that? Okay, so I think social beliefs typically associate women as savior of relationships in our country. Okay, so they don't want anything to break. Because then the women also are very scared because the support system starts shrinking for them. And we are always used to living with people around us. And suddenly this thought of really, you know, retaliating and, you know, getting out of the home, living alone, being a single parent. I mean, the whole ethos around all these living independently is very, very difficult for that little girl to really manage, I think. So I think it is very, very important that, one, I think this is a great initiative where, you know, some space is there, that, you know, there's a shoulder to cry on, to really see some counseling, some kind of, so that they can express these women. But I honestly feel, yes, I think this is one initiative. It is important we start really, at least we start here. But I think in the long term, I would really see three important aspects I think we need to invest in if we need to manage domestic violence as such. I would really say these three things would be investment in terms of inclusion. Okay, when I say inclusion, obviously education. Okay, I think our country has done quite a bit, especially I think states like Tamil Nadu. I know, like, you know, I've seen it 20 years back, 30 years back, and today every village I go to, I see even girls are educated. I think it's a first step in terms of empowerment as such. That way. Second, of course, next comes employment as such. And third is, of course, I think, like, parliamentary representation. I think women should have. I think it's very, very critical in terms of inclusion, access to financial services, and even things like access to having cell phones. I think there's a huge difference that has made to women. I can really see it among the self-help group women that, you know, having just a mobile phone, the kind of mobility it gives them, I think it's phenomenal. The kind of empowerment it gives them is phenomenal that way. And second one, of course, is justice. I think we've spoken about it. I think even today, there's so many biases in terms of, having a son is the most important thing and things like that. So that's an important thing we need to really work with. And discrimination norms in salary. I think even today, even in organizations, in corporates, I think it is still there. So how do we really deal with that? Because every single thing, in a sense, brings that esteem down that way. Okay, so norms in terms of opportunities. Okay, because there is, women, we know there is in an organization, in a corporate, biological needs of a woman are very different. Okay, so you have to give birth, you need to take care of family, the in-laws. So there's always a need to really, take a break and things like that. So when they come back, it becomes very difficult for them to really get back as such that way. And all these kinds of taunts and names and name callings and things like that start happening. And of course, I think ma'am has spoken about the legal system discriminations and how do we deal with it and things like that. And the third important thing is, of course, security. Okay, the security in terms of family, in terms of community, and in terms of society. Because I honestly feel domestic violence, if we have to deal with it in a longer term perspective, I think all these things need to be worked upon little by little as such. And wherever the gaps are, I think we need to keep plugging them. Okay, so I think those are the things that are very, very important. Yeah, education of the boys. So everything comes under that. So how do we deal with that? So yes, I think from the corporate point of view, as Geeta said, yeah, if we have to really look at it, it's a great step that, we create a certain space that so girls can come or youngsters can come or the women can come and talk about it. Because I think even today, even in corporates, I think it's a taboo topic. Nobody, either some women take it as a part of their life as such, so they don't even think that they have to come and express it that way. Okay, or some women, as I think they find it very difficult to come and express because of various other social reasons that way. They don't want to give up the family. They feel like, it may really belittle their family and their values and things like that. I think by and large, I think they learn to put up with it that way. And they make it a part of their life. I think that there's just this awareness that it is not, they don't have to take it. They can come and express it, and there will be a support group for them. I think can go a long way in making them realize that, they don't have to just put up with these things that way. Okay, they are human beings. They can live life fully. They can enjoy life fully. And they will be able to do that well, even if they have to come and say some of these difficulties and get it solved that way. Okay, many women think like, probably there's no solution to it, or probably they don't know how to really seek for a solution to it that way. So I think in that sense, I would really say, I think Vacya will go a long way in giving the women confidence, especially in a corporate setting, to really come and express themselves. And that itself will, bring down that burden on themselves as such. So I think I congratulate Rinku, and thanks Prasanna for giving this wonderful thing and the framework as such for Vacya. I think it's really useful to put the framework together so that corporates can adapt to it easily and adopt it as such. So that they can make that structure is very important as to, how women can come and really talk about it and things like that. I think it's a phenomenal structure you put together, and I congratulate both of you for this as such. Thank you, Rinku.
Thank you so much, Lata. As always, you add so much weight, and your words of encouragement really mean a lot. I would now like to request our last speaker for the evening, Jayanti, to share her views from a corporate standpoint.
Thanks, Rinku. I think I'm personally walking away with a lot of learnings and insights from this distinguished panel. I wish I had a framework like Vacya, several years ago at PayPal, but thank you, Vacya, for kind of putting this together and enlightening us as corporate professionals as well. So I'll probably touch on it. I know we are out of time as well, so I'll probably try and keep it short and touch on it and try to tee up, what we heard from the other panelists. So if I wear my corporate hat, I think one of the fundamental challenge and the myth I think that we have to break vis-a-vis corporates itself is for those that say that the major challenge from a corporate standpoint is domestic violence is something which happens within the confines of a household. committed by members of the household or the family institution, I say, and research and data, I heard a lot from you guys, also supports that. I think significant portion, I would say about 60% of those enduring domestic abuse are targeted at work, from harassing phone calls to abusive partners arriving at the office unannounced. And sometimes the corporate job itself becomes a cause for domestic abuse, right? Like Pushpa ma'am spoke about economic or psychological facets to domestic violence or abuse as well. So I think firstly, we have to kind of break this myth away from corporates and kind of reiterate that it's a core issue for organizations to address, not because it's about being good citizens or good people, which we have to be, but it also does impact, productivity, the business bottom line, retention, etc. So I think I would request Vacya to somewhere build that into the narrative as well. This is an extraordinary challenge, as all of us heard, which demands extraordinary partnerships. And I'm very happy to see again FLO and Project Vacya coming together on that. A couple of other themes, I think, several panelists, especially Lata ma'am and Prasanna, touched on it. From a corporate standpoint, a few levers that I think are critical, and we've tried to touch at PayPal as well, as one is around creating the right culture, which several people spoke about, which is truly empowering. I mean, in our society, it was great to hear the story that Pushpa ma'am called out about her house help. But I don't believe it's an open conversation. It's still a taboo topic, as somebody said. People don't talk. And there is societal conditioning and several cultural issues. So I think it's important as a company, as an entity, to be responsible and create the right culture, which is truly empowering and feels totally safe. I think safety is the key word here. So creating these safe spaces or safe ways to enable women, men as well, right? But we know domestic violence is more so against women. So I'm emphasizing on women here to communicate to their manager, their colleagues, or somebody that they can freely talk about, talk to about their challenges. We have consciously tutored our people at PayPal, for example, through several sensitization, not to dub issues as family matters or issues that are taboo, that we can't get into, or best left to, legal or HR to tackle, but look at those as something that is a roadblock in women realizing their full aspirational potential, right? Which we are committed to support. We have trained our managers and employees to listen, and we moved away. Somebody spoke about, conscious biases and inclusion, right? I think Geeta ma'am spoke about it. We've moved away from unconscious bias. It's no longer unconscious bias. I mean, we don't want to be conscious about our biases, but we want to get into a more conscious inclusion state. How do we consciously start including people in the narrative and being very open to core issues that are facing the society today? We've also created forums like what we call wellness mentors, which is a neutral third party. There are questions of, I think somebody referenced, you have to keep the confidentiality alive, the loss of privacy, and so on and so forth. So the way we've tackled it is we have wellness mentors, which is a neutral third party counselors, trained counselors who are available at campus for people to speak to. We have support through what we call our emotional EAP helplines on various matters, not just for employees, but their families. I think families need a lot of education as well. So that's available 24/7. Number two, in this COVID situation, I think the problem is even more stark. As an employer, immediately we jump into thinking, oh, how do we support people working at home? Do we have the right ergonomics and stuff like that? So they're comfortable, office furniture and things like that. It's just not about that, right? It's about, again, training managers and colleagues to identify all the possible signs of distress. There could be psychological stressors that we all heard about. There could be domestic issues. There could be an employee's, fundamentally inability to work safely in the confines of their home, which has now become their everything, right? Their space. So what we do at PayPal, for example, is we've instituted wellness surveys, what we call wellness surveys every week to listen, and every single comment is being read, right? I personally read all the 4,000 employee comments, and we have action plan every week and so on and so forth. So we do listen. So listening becomes critical. Third, there are ecosystem support systems to prevent, to listen, the right culture, all of that is good. But how do we support post? As employers, when we know about, somebody is really kind of struggling, how do we play a pivotal role in supporting survivors and supporting women who have gone through to rebuild their lives? What about policies around flexible working, supporting them for unplanned leave? And other employee needs, for example, paying wages to a different bank account. I've seen some I'm thinking about it as we speak, I'm just inspired by all of you that I'm saying maybe even a different bank account where their salary credits could happen, or making emergency salary payments available for those in real financial hardship, etc. So those are the different things. And I'm grateful to Vacya for coming up with a framework that kind of pulls all this together. So I believe, we should make this a movement. Employers should be encouraged to do all that they can to ensure there is a visibility to the issues. The mindset is kind of removed from a corporate thinking standpoint, and people are trained to identify people at risk. And I'm looking forward to partner, and learn more from Vacya and FLO in this effort. Thanks, Rinku.
Thank you so much, Jayanti. That was really, really pertinent and very, like, you were on spot with everything here. I would now like to request our Senior Vice Chair, Jayashree, to deliver her vote of thanks, please.
To have so many power women all together, all at once, is a real sight to behold. So what more can we ask for to launch an initiative such as this, Vacya, an initiative to create awareness and support for cause of domestic violence. So thank you all for being a part of this initiative today. There are no words to express our gratitude. Thank you all so much for extending your support to FLO Chennai. Thank you, Suhasini. You did a series like Pen way back so many years ago. Many of you might already know that FLO has been tied up with NAM for many initiatives in the recent years. Thank you, Honorable Justice Ms. Pushpa Satyanarayana, for your time. I'm so happy to meet you here, though virtually, after so many years. And we are extremely proud of your endeavors and to think of the landmark judgments that you have passed. I thank Prasanna of PCVC. You have spoken of issues some women face that some of us are not even aware of. So we look forward to working with you in this noble cause. I thank Ms. Geeta Ramaseshan for giving us so much information about the legal aspect of it. And I thank Ms. Lata Pandirajan and Jayanti Vaidyanathan for your insightful talk from a corporate perspective. I thank all the past presidents, past chairs, GB members, committee members, members of the press, and members at large who have been extending their support as always. It means a lot to us at a time when we have moved to the virtual platform and we have doubled our efforts to ensure it's a success. So thank you all once again. Looking forward to meeting you all at our next meeting on 17th. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. And we'll be connecting offline for sure. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.